A seed can lie in dry desert dust for decades without consuming a single drop of water. You would think that plant survival in hyperarid climates is driven by active physiological defenses, but the evolutionary history of flora shows that true resilience relies on total developmental shutdown and physical armor. Watch what actually happens. Plants survive not by actively fighting extreme drought, but by retreating into passive, structurally shielded dormancy. Today, we will examine how plants conquered the driest places on Earth by learning to play dead, and how a subtle change in atmospheric chemistry can instantly shatter this ancient defense. We will trace this journey from the deep evolutionary past to a modern threat that strips away a plant's physical shields, leaving them completely vulnerable to the elements. To understand why active struggle is a losing strategy, we must look back to the very beginning of terrestrial life. The first land plants evolved approximately 468 million years ago and reproduced using spores. These ancestral plants were bound to moisture by an absolute physical law. Plants such as ferns, mosses, and liverworts do not produce seeds and rely on water-dependent methods for propagation. For these organisms, a dry spell was not just a temporary hardship, it was an absolute existential barrier. Their reproductive cells required a physical film of liquid water to swim through and complete their life cycles. If the water vanished, their entire lineage stopped. They could not venture into the vast, dry interiors of ancient continents because they lacked the ability to pause their development. They had to actively grow, and active growth requires constant moisture. For millions of years, the green frontier of our planet was restricted to swamps and coastal margins. Many people assume that plants eventually colonize the deserts by developing deep root pumps or highly active physiological systems that fight dryness. But active physiological defense is incredibly expensive. In a true hyperarid environment, where it may not rain for decades, maintaining active cellular repair, transport, and photosynthesis is a mathematical impossibility. A plant that tries to fight a multi-decade drought with active metabolism will eventually run out of energy and water. The evolutionary breakthrough that allowed plants to conquer the dry land was not a more efficient pump, but the complete abandonment of active life. They survived by learning how to shut down entirely, wrapping their future in physical armor. This transition began when plants stopped relying on fragile spores and invented the seed. A seed is botanically defined as a plant structure holding an embryo and stored nutrients within a protective outer coat called a testa. This outer coat, the testa, is the key physical armor. It acts as an impermeable barrier that completely seals the delicate embryo off from the dry atmosphere. Inside this armor, the embryo enters a state of developmental arrest. Its metabolic rate drops to near zero. It does not breathe, it does not grow, and it does not consume precious water. This is not a slow struggle. It is a total, passive shutdown. The seed does not actively defend itself against the desert. It simply waits out the drought behind a structural wall. The evolution of this structural defense took millions of years to perfect. Seed ferns evolved during the Carboniferous period and possessed ovules enclosed in protective branching structures called cupules. These early experiments in shielding showed that protecting the vulnerable reproductive cells was the only path away from wet environments. Later, gymnosperms, the earliest seed-bearing plants to appear, lacked ovaries to contain their seeds and arose during the late Devonian period from 416 million to 358 million years ago. Even without ovaries, these plants utilized tough, resinous seeds to disperse across dry landscapes. By eliminating the requirement for external water during reproduction, they began to claim drier inland environments. The seed was proving that the best defense against a harsh world was a physical shield and a deep sleep. As evolution progressed, this passive defense system became even more sophisticated. Angiosperm seeds are made of three genetically distinct components: the embryo, the typically triploid endosperm, and the seed coat derived from maternal tissue. This triploid endosperm acts as a highly concentrated nutrient reserve, while the maternal seed coat provides a tough, multi-layered physical barrier. Together, these three components form a self-contained life capsule. The embryo is kept in a state of suspended animation, shielded from scorching desert heat that can reach well over 120 degrees Fahrenheit, 49 degrees Celsius. The plant survives because its active, vulnerable phase is completely locked away, protected by maternal tissues that do not require metabolic maintenance to remain strong. The sheer durability of this passive strategy has fascinated scientists for centuries. Augustin Pyramus de Candolle published an early guide on seed storage and viability in his 1832 work Conservation des Grains. He recognized that the secret to long-term seed survival was preventing any chemical interactions with the outside environment. Decades later, Henry B. Guppy published a 528-page book in 1912 titled Studies in Seeds and Fruits, an Investigation with the Balance. Guppy spent years meticulously weighing seeds to study how their protective coats regulate moisture loss and absorbency. These early researchers proved that the seed's longevity is a direct function of its physical integrity. The less the seed interacts with its environment, and the more complete its physical isolation, the longer the embryo inside can survive the passage of time. But here is the mid-video reframe that changes how we must look at plant survival. We often view drought as a simple lack of rain, a purely climatic challenge that plants are built to endure. But in reality, drought is only a threat when a plant's physical armor is compromised. If the protective shield is damaged, the passive defense system fails, and the plant is forced to actively fight a battle it cannot win. To see this in action, we must look beyond the microscopic seed to the macro-level armor of adult plants, their bark. Just as the testa protects the seed, bark protects the mature tree from drying out. When external stressors degrade this physical armor, even the most drought-tolerant plants are left completely defenseless against the dry air. What could possibly destroy this physical armor on a massive scale? The answer lies in the sky, but not in the way you might expect. Acid rain typically has an unusually acidic pH level averaging between 4 and 5. This corrosive precipitation is caused by emissions of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide reacting with water molecules in the atmosphere to generate sulfuric and nitric acids. While human activities are the primary source of acid rain compounds, volcanic eruptions naturally produce sulfur dioxide and lightning strikes naturally produce nitrogen oxides. When this acidic mixture falls on a forest, it does not kill the trees directly by poisoning them. Instead, it slowly eats away at their physical defenses, turning a dry spell into a deadly crisis. The consequences of this chemical erosion are devastating. Persistent acid rain damages tree bark, leaving plants and trees more vulnerable to environmental stressors like drought, fire, frost, and pest infestations. Once the bark is compromised, the tree's natural seal is broken. Moisture escapes rapidly from the trunk, and pathogens easily invade the living tissues. At the same time, acid rain strips soil of essential nutrients like calcium and magnesium that are critical for healthy plant growth. Without these nutrients, the tree cannot rebuild its damaged bark or maintain its cellular structural integrity. The plant is forced into an active, desperate struggle to survive, exhausting its energy reserves in a futile attempt to repair its broken armor. The link between this atmospheric threat and forest decline was first uncovered during the Industrial Revolution. In 1852, Robert Angus Smith demonstrated the link between atmospheric pollution and acid rain in Manchester, later coining the term acid rain in 1872. His discovery revealed that our industrial activities were quietly stripping away the physical protection of the natural world. This brings us to the core truth of our investigation. Plants do not survive extreme conditions by fighting them. True resilience relies on total developmental shutdown and physical armor. From the ancient testa of the seed to the protective bark of a tree, survival is a passive retreat behind a structural shield. If the hidden architecture of survival fascinates you, the story of how soils breathe is next. Subscribe to catch it.